This is Jack Hibbs. He had some comments about the Ten Commandments, and it's kind of bizarre and comical at the same time. Listen to this. He's a televangelist, by the way.
It's the Bible's version of the Ten Commandments, which, if obeyed, everybody's going to live, nobody's going to get murdered, and kids are going to stop lying about what happened to their homework.
See, if we just put the Ten Commandments in schools, it would resolve all of these problems. Kids wouldn't lie about their homework anymore. See? Jeez.
Their homework, and teachers are not going to be raping kids anymore.
Teachers are doing what? Are you kidding me? He thinks that this is happening in schools?
And teachers are not going to be raping kids anymore.
So he wants to put a picture of the Ten Commandments on the wall in every classroom to prevent teachers from, to put it in a monetizer-friendly way, taking advantage of kids. Well, if I really wanted to fix this problem, which doesn't exist, but if I wanted to fix it, I would say you should put a teacher's assistant in every classroom. Like, don't ever leave teachers alone with kids, ever. But I guess a picture on the wall could fix it too? Question mark? Anyway, this is not the first time that, televangelists have argued to put the Ten Commandments in classrooms, and that'll just, fix all of our problems. This is Ken Peters, close friends with Greg Locke. He was also flown into the Capitol on January 6th by Mike Pillow's private jet. You know, Mike Lindell of My Pillow? Yeah, that guy. Listen to what he has to say here.
We don't necessarily use those laws in America because we have our own laws, but then there was the moral law, the Ten Commandments. Now, let me tell you something. When people like to say that we're not under the law anymore.
Right, we're not under the old law. That's correct.
That is true as far as our salvation is concerned.
Okay. The old law, if you don't know, the history of all this, was written, thousands of years ago, and it applied to Jewish people specifically. It was written in, the books of Exodus and Leviticus. I think it was written down multiple times. There were 613 commandments, I think, not just 10. And they were things like don't shave your beard in a V, don't put two seeds in the same field of different crops, don't wear cotton and linen blends, don't eat pork, don't eat shellfish, whole bunch of other stuff. And if you ask modern day Jews about some of this, I've asked a Jewish person about it, and the answer that this person gave was the rules likely were created because the rabbis were also the doctors, and they didn't understand what was going on, but they knew that pork made people sick a lot of the time because, it's easy to undercook. Now, that's not actually true, but that's part of the lore. Anyway, I think that pigs were just viewed as dirty animals because they would eat anything. That's why they weren't eaten back then. Anyway, the Jewish community followed the old law. It was their legal system at the time. And as time went on, they reformed and cleaned up the legal system because when Jesus was on earth, the Jews of the era believed that God didn't just give Moses the 613 commandments or whatever. He also gave Moses oral commandments. Basically, he gave Moses expected cultural values and ideals. God formed out the culture of his people. And since it was done orally instead of on, tablets or whatever, they believed that God didn't want them to write these oral traditions or oral commandments down, so they never did. Until the temple was destroyed for the second time in 70 CE, I believe. Then they wrote down the oral commandments and compiled all of the laws and all the expectations that God had for them thousands of years ago into something called the Talmud. The Talmud includes the old law and oral traditions and everything. It's a pretty big book, I believe. But some of those old commandments were irrelevant and not really followed by people of the era. Like this law about you shall not lie with a man, it is an abomination, whatever else, Leviticus 18 and Leviticus 20. That commandment about not lying with a man as you would a woman or whatever, that wasn't followed. That law was ignored. Yeah, it was technically in the moral code, but it wasn't something that people actually got killed for or actually got prosecuted for or whatever in the Old Testament, like in those days. So when the Talmud was written, there are two different Talmuds. There's the Babylonian Talmud and the Jerusalem Talmud, I think. I don't remember. One of them is a lot more like clear and succinct and preferred today because it's more, filled out basically. When it was written, they excluded that law because it just it didn't apply about being gay. It just didn't, it wasn't part of their culture. So, I think I'll look to the people who wrote the laws in the first place and followed them for thousands of years for my answers, rather than some jagoffs who decided to selectively pick out the ones that they want to follow. They're just going to ignore the one about pork and shellfish. So anyway, listen to his justification for this.
Quick interjection, this won't take long, I promise. I just want to say I'd appreciate it if you check my Patreon. owenmorgan.com/Patreon to find it. YouTube's algorithm goes up and down, so I can never predict where it's going to be. Having patrons gives me some level of stability. Okay, back to the video.
True, as far as our salvation is concerned, the 10 Commandments are no longer requirements for you to be saved and to be in covenant with God. That is absolutely true.
Okay.
But you know what else is true?
God, I knew there was a but coming.
God didn't throw the 10 Commandments away.
He literally did. He literally said, we're throwing these out and replacing them with 2 new commandments. Love your neighbor as yourself and love God with your whole heart, mind, soul, body, strength, blah, 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 whatever. He literally threw them out. I mean, not literally, I guess. He literally said, do not follow these anymore. Galatians 5, you know what? Let's pull it up. Let's really dive into this, shall we? Paul didn't know Jesus, converted to Christianity 3 years later after Jesus died, but became a central figure in the church, in the early Christian church. He formed out the culture and the laws and the expectations and the everythings. And a lot of Christians today view Paul as a prophetic teacher on the same level as Jesus, effectively, as far as how his teachings should be valued. I don't think that, but Ken Peters does. So Paul, when he was forming out the culture and all that stuff for Christianity, he was writing letters to these different congregations, the congregation in Corinth and the congregation in Thessalonica and in Galatia. And all of these letters we're collected, we have these letters today, Galatians, 1st and 2nd Thessalonians, 1st and 2nd Corinthians, so on and so forth. And in Galatians, the letter to the Galatian congregation or whatever, he explained that he didn't want to be mixed up with Judaism. So you should not follow the old law. Explicitly said, do not follow the old law. If you do follow the old law, you can still be a Christian, but you have to follow all of it. So if you it says here, Galatians 4-6, you who are trying to be justified by the law have been alienated from Christ, i.e., you're trying to get salvation through following, the 10 Commandments, and that's not going to do it. You're not going to be saved by doing that. You have fallen away from grace if that's what you're doing. For through the Spirit, we eagerly await by faith the righteousness for which we hope. It's not the 10 Commandments that we should be following, it's faith in Jesus that we should be looking forward to as our salvation. That's what he's saying here. For in Christ Jesus, neither circumcision nor uncircumcision has any value. The only thing that counts is faith expressing itself through love. Well, kind of pokes a hole in his whole ideology, doesn't it? It's interesting. In verses 2-4 here, it says, mark my words, I, Paul, tell you that if you let yourselves be circumcised, Christ will be of no value to you at all. If you follow the 10 Commandments and the other 603, and the other 603 or however many there are, if you follow them, Jesus is of no value to you. Again, I declare to every man who lets himself be circumcised that he is obligated to obey the whole law. You follow one of these commandments, you have to do all of them. He wanted to make it difficult for people to be both Christian and Jewish. And he wanted to ostracize people who wanted to live by Jewish culture. He's trying to split Christianity away from Judaism. And our buddy here, Ken Peters, seems to have a completely different view of it. Okay, go ahead and contradict Paul for me. Lay it down.
What else is true? God didn't throw the 10 Commandments away. The moral law is not a way into the kingdom, but it is the culture of the kingdom.
I don't know what that means. It's not the culture of the kingdom. Paul explicitly said, do not follow the old law. I don't understand. How did this like fly over his head? Is he really this unknowledgeable about the Bible? I'm just some asshole, okay? Who has 2 thumbs and is just some asshole on YouTube? This guy right here. I didn't go to seminary. I don't know any of this stuff. How is it that I could just pull up a verse, a random verse that I happen to know off the top of my head here, and shoot this guy's whole theology to shit? How is it possible that I can do that if he knows anything about the Bible? Turn in your pastor's card. You don't deserve it.
So we don't get saved by obeying the 10 commandments, by walking a moral life, but the culture of the kingdom includes the 10 commandments.
No, it doesn't.
So no one, from the greatest preacher in the nation, is exempt from the moral law of God. And God still blesses us as a nation when we follow his word. And when this country gets away from God's moral law, we will have the consequences. Now remember, we're not saved by the moral law, but we are also not to detach from the Old Testament.
I don't understand. What the hell is he talking about right now? The Bible literally says, don't follow the 10 commandments anymore. It literally says that. How did he, get here? He must have read Galatians, right? It's like these people are giving ridiculous, nonsensical moral expectations and rules and all this other stuff, and they're basing it off of these verses, and it's literally contradicted by other verses in the Bible that apply to this subject. Did they really not know this, or are they lying? Like, which one? I don't understand. I mean, listen to this guy. This is at Andrew Womack's church. He's a televangelist. He's on Kenneth Copeland's TV network, the Victory Channel. Absolutely nutty, this guy is. But listen to what he had to say about the 10 Commandments.
And what made America stable, prosperous, safe for 2 centuries plus was that we believed in morals, and we taught morals, and in public buildings were postings of the 10 Commandments. It's natural law. Now,
It's natural law? It's natural law to not say swears or to not blaspheme or whatever? That's natural law? Okay. And I guess he thinks that if we have 10 commandments in classrooms and in public buildings, there won't be any more murders. There won't be any more theft or blaspheming or whatever. What? Okay.
Now, hang with me. I find this so fascinating. Do you know what historians have discovered? That
Tell me.
in all of these cultures, all of the world cultures, all of which descended from Shem, Ham, and Japheth.
All of the world cultures descended from Shem, Ham, and Japheth? Aren't those Noah's kids? I think they're Noah's kids. No, they didn't. Okay, we can trace our, what's called our mitochondrial Eve back, 20,000 years or something? It's the shared mother that all humans have. I'm sorry, my mistake, 200,000 years ago. Hypothetical woman who's thought to be the most recent common ancestor of all living humans through their mother's mitochondrial DNA. All living humans. I can't find how distantly related we are. I believe that it's 50th cousins? ? I'll see if I can find it and put the answer in after I finish recording here. But
that in all of these cultures, all of the world cultures, all of which descended from Shem, Ham, and Japheth.
That is completely inaccurate. It's simply not that recent. It's pretty recent, and we're pretty closely related, but not that recent. Not 5,000 something years ago, the way they view it. Noah's flood did not actually happen. And by the way, Noah's flood was totally 100% plagiarized from the Epic of Gilgamesh. I mean, it's uncanny in how similar they are. It's weird. They can't possibly be as similar as they are without Noah's flood plagiarizing from the Epic of Gilgamesh, in my opinion.
Descended from Shem, Ham, and Japheth. All of the humans in the world have this knowledge of morals, and it mirrors exactly what you'll read in Exodus 20, the 10.
Really? So our morals exactly mirror the Ten Commandments. Everybody's morals on all of planet Earth, huh? Okay. Well, I honestly can't say that it's ever been a problem for me to say Yahweh, using God's name in vain or without purpose. Yahweh, Yahweh, Yahweh. Yeah, I don't care. Doesn't really bother me at all. Weird. So I guess it's not written on my heart. Does that mean I'm like a child of Satan or something? Thou shalt not have no other gods before me. Oh, is it written on our hearts that we all want to worship like the Christian God? Don't tell Buddhists or Shinto people that. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image. I think that's pretty natural to people. They like making little statues and stuff. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. I mean, I say that as much as I want. So remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Yeah, I don't think people have an innate desire to like take the Sabbath day off and not use any electricity or fire or anything at all for the entire day. I think that's like a struggle that you have to actually work for. But okay, all right, whatever, I suppose. But check this one out. This is John Hagee. He's another televangelist, and he has an idea about how we can just fix the problems in society. This clip, by the way, is from mid-May 2022.
What would happen if America obeyed all of the Ten Commandments? Our schools would be teaching the Ten Commandments, not throwing them out the back door. There wouldn't be a critical race theory being taught.
There wouldn't? Which commandment, which of the 10 condemns critical race theory, quote unquote?
There would be no transgender sex being taught.
Which commandment is opposed to that? Which of the 10? Show me on the list. Look, he's got a bunch of commandments right here behind him. Which one condemns being trans or critical race theory?
If the Ten Commandments were in the schools, there would not be condoms in the restrooms.
I don't think that there are any in the restrooms anyway, to my knowledge. My school didn't have any. I hear all of this arguing and complaining about like pride parades being inappropriate for children. I marched in the New York City Pride Parade for 2024 with the New York City Commission on Human Rights. It was pretty cool. First time ever being in a pride parade. Not one inappropriate thing. I didn't see a single inappropriate thing. At worst, I saw people in swimsuits. That's it. I just saw like some dudes wearing like shorts. That's it. Like, I don't know what kind of a fictitious world these people live in, but there aren't like people trying to expose kids to, graphic material. There aren't people trying to like walk around naked during pride events. There aren't condoms in the restroom, to my knowledge. Like, all of this stuff is fake.
There wouldn't be crime in the street, for you shall not steal. There shall not be murder, you shall not commit murder. There would be no abortions, because I assure you, in God's opinion, abortion is murder.
Okay, wow, that's weird, since, Numbers 5:11-23 completely contradicts that. Like, gives us the exact opposite opinion than John Hagee just gave us. Numbers 5:11-23, concerning an unfaithful wife. It's a test for an unfaithful wife. If you think your wife's cheated on you, you are obligated to go to the priest and get an abortion, basically. And he'll give her some bitter water, some concoction or whatever. She drinks it. If she did cheat on you, she'll have an abortion. If not, then the baby will be born and everything's fine. Sure as hell sounds like abortion to me. Am I missing something? How can this guy stand here and so confidently claim that he knows what God feels when it is in direct contradiction to what the Bible says?
Shall not steal. There shall not be murder. You shall not commit murder. There would be no abortions, because I assure you, in God's opinion, abortion is murder.
Like, people clapping for this nonsense. Really? Did they not read the Bible? Do they not know about Numbers 5:11-23? I released a video forever ago, like a short, YouTube short, about Numbers 5:11-23, and I said, God is pro-abortion. Like, what do you want me to do with this? And I waited for like comments to like debunk me. Tell me I'm wrong. Show me how I'm wrong here. Does God like abortion or not? It seems like he does. And I got in the comments almost exclusively people just saying, leave it to an atheist to misinterpret the Bible. How? How did I misinterpret this? This is the clearest cut example of God loving abortion that I have ever seen in my life. Like, these people are so completely full of shit. Everything out of their mouths is nonsense. Everything. Check this one out. This is a Republican Oklahoma senator, state senator, talking about the 10 Commandments in classrooms and stuff too.
The 10 Commandments is not controversial. Our entire structure of our government, our U.S. Constitution, was founded by Christians on biblical principles. They'll say that that the First Amendment says that you can't have an establishment of religion, but
That's correct. It does say that, as a matter of fact.
but that's specifically applied to the federal government. If you go back and you read the state constitutions.
Is he dumb as dog, or is he just a scumbag? Which is it? I can't tell. The federal government, the federal laws, the Constitution apply to everything, every state, every territory, everybody. State constitutions can draw out new laws or new expectations or whatever, but they always fall under the umbrella of the federal Constitution. So the federal government says you cannot jail journalists for reporting on something that you don't like, freedom of press. You cannot put people in prison for criticizing a political opponent or a political campaign or whatever. That's illegal, freedom of speech. A state constitution cannot reverse that. Is he really this fucking stupid, or is he pretending?
Read the Virginia Constitution of 1776. They specifically say that people need to have moral Christian.
Virginia Constitution of 1776. Now, wait a minute. That existed before the federal U.S. Constitution? The U.S. Constitution was written in 1787 and ratified in 1789. The Revolutionary War, I believe, started in 1776 and ended in like 1782 or 83 or something, right? So how is it that Virginia had a constitution before the Revolutionary War even started, when there wasn't a federal government? Is that real? That could be. Maybe I'm the idiot. That's possible. When did Virginia ratify the Constitution? Weird. It looks to me like Virginia ratified their state constitution on June 25th, 1788. Super strange. How about that? Is this guy lying to me? Or is he just dumb as dog? Which one? Who told him this? Looks like he's the idiot, not me. Weird. Is that right? I mean, again, like, I'm willing to say that I'm the idiot here. I'm willing to say it. Somebody, correct me here.
That you can't have an establishment of religion, but that's specifically applied to the federal government. If you go back and you read the state constitutions, read the Virginia Constitution of 1776, they specifically say that people need to have moral Christian behaviors. They specifically mention Christianity in their state constitution. People look at the federal constitution as the be-all, end-all, not realizing that the states do have a role.
It is the be-all, end-all. It is the final document that everybody has to follow. Are you kidding?
Be-all, end-all, not realizing that the states do have a role. This would be a state bill that would impact the state of Oklahoma. It is not establishing any specific religion, but it is relying on our Judeo-Christian principles upon which our country was founded.
I love it, dude. It's not establishing any specific religion except Christianity. This is so stupid. This is so stupid. Then there's this classic clip right here of this legislator. I believe his name is Tallarico? James Tallarico. I think that's who it is. It's hard to tell. From Texas State House of Representatives. And somebody was putting forth a bill to force 10 Commandments to be in classrooms, like we've seen in Louisiana. And this guy shredded the person. By the way, this is from late January 2024.
And I say this to you as a fellow Christian. Representative, I know you're a devout Christian, and so am I. This bill, to me, is not only unconstitutional, it's not only un-American, I think it is also deeply unchristian. And I say that because I believe this bill is idolatrous, I believe it is exclusionary, and I believe it is arrogant. And those three things, in my reading of the gospel, are diametrically opposed to the teachings of Jesus.
Oh, absolutely.
You probably know Matthew 6:5, when Jesus says, don't be like the hypocrites. So we love to pray publicly on street corners. When you pray, go into your room and shut the door.
100%. And also, we don't follow the 10 Commandments. Paul explicitly said, don't do that. How could it possibly be any clearer than that?
And pray to your Father who is in secret. Yes. A religion that has to force people to put up a poster to prove its legitimacy is a dead religion.
If only.
And it's not one that I want to be a part of. It's not one that I think I am a part of. You know that in Scripture it says faith without works is what?
Dead.
Is dead. My concern is instead of bringing a bill that will feed the hungry, clothe the naked, heal the sick, we're instead mandating that people put up a poster.
Dude, I love it. This is exactly what I was saying earlier. Like, if you want to solve these problems like Jack Hibbs laid out, you know, teachers taking advantage of kids, put a teacher's assistant in. There are a billion real world solutions to these problems, and they are implementing none of them. They're not even offering solutions. They're just saying, put up this poster. Is that going to solve anything for anybody? Of course it isn't.
And we both follow a teacher, a rabbi, who said, don't let the law get in the way of loving your neighbor. Loving your neighbor is the most important law. It is the summation of all the law and all the prophets. I would submit to you that our neighbor also includes the Hindu student who sits in a classroom, the Buddhist student who sits in a classroom.
Yeah, it's like everybody.
And an atheist student who sits in a classroom. And my question to you is, does this bill truly love those students?
No, it's trying to impose its will and beliefs and interests on those students.
I'm going to go a different direction than I think you're trying to lead me.
It's not leading her anywhere.
And that is...
Except he's leading her down the path of like what Jesus said. Are you kidding?
And that is that a very great wrong was done in our classrooms with that 1980 decision.
Every time on this committee that we try to teach students values like empathy or kindness, we're told we can't because that's the parents' role.
I love parents' rights. Parents' rights. Can't stop talking about parents' rights. Yeah, I love that to death. This guy's awesome.
Every time on this committee that we try to teach basic sex education to keep our kids safe, we're told that's the parents' role. But now you're putting religious commandments, literal commandments in our classrooms, and you're saying that's the state's role. Why is that not the parents' role?
Silence.
That
Are you going to answer? You're going to act like a fool.
That's really an interesting...
She picks the fool option. Okay, that works, I suppose. Not the one I'd choose, but that's an option.
That's really an interesting rabbit trail that you've gone on with that.
Rabbit trail?
Would you be comfortable with adding language to receive parental consent from all the parents of students in the classroom before putting it up?
I would not.
Really? Knock me over with a feather. She wouldn't be in favor of that. So she's not in favor of parents' rights? I am just blown away.
Would not. I am, again, going to keep it clean as it came over.
So you don't want parental consent when it comes to students receiving religious commandments?
I don't believe that. I think that these are foundational to being a good citizen.
This is a joke. This woman is a joke. This whole movement is a joke. How do these people operate on a day-to-day basis with their heads so far up their own?
Do you believe schools are for education and not indoctrination?
Absolutely.
I guess what I'm trying to figure out is why is having a rainbow in a classroom considered indoctrination and not having the 10 Commandments in a classroom?
Is that a question?
Yes.
Are you serious? Is that a question? Yeah. Did it have a question mark at the end?
Is that a question?
Yes.
I am not arguing another poster. I'm arguing that the 10 Commandments are represented in our earliest educations.
No, they aren't. No, they aren't. And who gives a... You know what else was represented in our earliest education systems, not the Ten Commandments, but the idea that the elements were earth, fire, water, and air or some other thing, right? I mean, I don't know about the United States education system, but early education systems, do we really want to follow that? Should we take our cues from like thousands of years old documents or ideals or whatever? Really? Is there anything that'll pierce that granite head?
System.
I just worry this is what gives us religious people a bad name.
Oh, absolutely.
That instead of living out the way of Jesus, we're instead imposing our beliefs on other people. Instead of leading by example, we're leading by mandates. And so I'm very offended by this legislation.
I appreciate that.
I know you and I have worked together, and I'm not casting aspersions on you, and I would love to work with you.
I'll cast aspersions for you. Don't worry about that.
But as it is currently written, I find this to be a deeply offensive bill.
Dude, I love everything about it. This guy is such a Chad. Is that the right word? I feel like, or alpha? I don't know what the word is. He is fantastic. Anyway, tell me what you think about this in the comments. These people are jokes. They're jokes. They directly contradict the Bible, like in the case of like Galatians 5, for example, and pretend that they didn't. Turn in your pastor's card. You have no idea what you're talking about.